Elias Rourke stood very still, because every instinct told him that moving at the wrong moment might be considered an insult to half the galaxy. The hall was enormous, far larger than anything built on Earth. It curved upward like the inside of a shell, its surface glowing softly with shifting colors that responded to sound and movement. Thousands of beings filled the chamber, seated in layered arcs that rose high above the central floor. Some were tall and thin, others wide and low, others shapes Elias could barely describe. Some breathed air, some mist, some light. All of them were watching the ceremony with perfect attention. And all of them could see him. Elias was human, very human. He felt painfully aware of it. His uniform was simple compared to the elaborate garments worn by many delegates. Earth had decided simplicity was safer. Neutral colors, clean lines, no symbols that could be misread. He represented humanity's first official step into full galactic membership, and the weight of that responsibility pressed on him like invisible gravity. He reminded himself to breathe. The interstellar convergence ceremony was ancient, older than human civilization, older than Earth's recorded history. It was meant to mark the formal recognition of a new species as a participant in galactic affairs. Not a celebration exactly, but a witnessing. Agreements were not signed here. No deals were made. The ceremony existed to acknowledge existence, nothing more. At least that was what the briefing had said. Elias stood on a circular platform at the center of the hall. A soft field held him in place, not restraining him, but guiding where he could step. Across from him stood the representative of the host civilization, the one species whose territory held the convergence world. She was impossible to ignore. High Matriarch Calith of the Virexian Concord stood taller than most beings in the room. Her form was elegant, symmetrical, and clearly designed with intention rather than chance. Smooth, layered skin reflected the hall's light in shades of deep blue and silver. Her eyes, 4 of them, were bright and steady, focused entirely on Elias. She had not looked away from him since he entered the hall. Elias tried not to fidget. He had practiced for this moment for months. He knew the script. He knew when to speak and when to remain silent. The translator, implant behind his ear, hummed softly, ready to interpret. A low, resonant sound moved through the hall. It wasn't a voice exactly, but the combined signal of the ceremonial system. The ceremony was beginning. Calith raised one long, graceful arm. The motion alone silenced the chamber completely. She spoke, her voice layered with harmonics that the translator smoothed into something Elias could understand. "Witnessed beings of the known stars," she said. "We gather to observe the arrival of a new voice." Her gaze never left Elias. "The species known as humanity stands before us. They have crossed the dark between systems. They have learned our signals. They have chosen approach over isolation." A soft ripple of sound moved through the chamber, the galactic equivalent of polite acknowledgement. Elias swallowed. This part was going as expected. Calith continued. "By ancient accord, the host civilization observes. We do not judge. We do not challenge. We simply recognize." She paused. The pause stretched longer than the ceremony guide had described. Elias felt a flicker of unease. Calith tilted her head slightly, studying him. The movement felt personal, not ceremonial. "Human Elias Rourke," she said. His name echoed through the translator, clear and sharp. He straightened. "I am here," he replied, keeping his voice steady. "You speak for your species," Calith said. "Yes," Elias answered. "I speak with the trust of Earth." Another pause. This one was longer. Calith stepped forward. The hall reacted immediately. Subtle lights shifted. Several delegates leaned toward one another. This was not part of the usual sequence. Elias's pulse quickened, but he did not step back. Humans had learned quickly that retreat could be read as fear. Kayla stood only a few steps away now. Up close, Elias could see fine patterns along her skin, shifting gently as if responding to her thoughts. "You are smaller than I expected," she said calmly. Elias blinked. That definitely was not in the script. "I suppose I am average for my species," he said. Something like amusement flickered across her expression. "You do not hide behind ornament," she continued. "You do not amplify your presence with false signals. Why?" Elias hesitated. Then he answered honestly, "But?"
"We thought it was respectful to arrive as we are." A murmur spread through the chamber. Not loud, but noticeable.
Kayla's eyes brightened. "Respect," she repeated. She turned, addressing the assembly. "You see them," she said. "They do not posture. They do not cloak themselves in ancient authority. They stand exposed." Elias felt very exposed. Caliph turned back to him. "Human Elias Rourke," she said, her voice now carrying a different tone, one that made the translator hesitate for a fraction of a second. "Do you understand the nature of witnessing?" "I believe so," Elias said carefully. "It is to be seen as we are, without force or demand." "Correct," Kayla said. "And do you understand the nature of choice?" Elias frowned slightly. "Choice?" "Yes," she said. "The choice to bind oneself." The chamber went completely silent.
Elias's heart skipped. "I'm not sure I follow," he said.
Paleth raised her arm again. Symbols of life formed above the platform, ancient and complex. The ceremonial system reacted instantly, recognizing the pattern. Elias's implant buzzed with warning signals. Something significant was happening. "In the presence of witnesses," Caliph declared, her voice echoing through the hall, "I name this human as my chosen mate." For a moment, Elias thought the translator had malfunctioned. Then the chamber erupted, not into chaos, but into shock. Waves of sound, color, and movement rippled through the hall. Delegates stood, shifted, signaled urgently to one another. Elias stood frozen. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely audible. "There must be some mistake." Kylif did not look away from him. "There is no mistake," she said calmly.
"This isn't. I wasn't told." Elias struggled for words. "Is this symbolic?"
"Diplomatic?" Caliph lowered her arm. "It is binding," she said.
"It is witnessed." The ceremonial system confirmed her words. The light pattern stabilized, locking into place. Elias felt a cold wave move through him. "High Matriarch," he said carefully, forcing himself to breathe. "With respect, I cannot consent to something I don't understand." Something shifted in Kayla's expression. Not anger, not irritation. Interest. "Consent is the foundation," she said. "You are correct." She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "This bond is not ownership," she said. "It is alignment. I have chosen you because you challenge us." Elias stared at her. "I just arrived yesterday." "Yes," Caliph replied. "And already you have." The chamber waited. Every being present was focused on the human and the matriarch. Caliph straightened and addressed the assembly once more. "The declaration stands," she said, "unless the human refuses." Every eye turned to Elias. He felt the weight of Earth, of humanity's fragile place among the stars, pressing down on him. Refusal might insult the host civilization. Acceptance might bind humanity to something irreversible. He chose the only honest path. "I don't know enough to accept," he said clearly, "but I will not refuse out of fear." A ripple moved through the chamber. Kalith smiled. "Then the bond waits," she said.
"And the galaxy watches." The ceremonial lights dimmed, signaling the end of the witnessing. Elias stood in the center of the hall, heart racing, as the realization settled in.
Humanity had come to be recognized. Instead, it had been chosen, and nothing, Elias suspected, would ever be simple again. The hall slowly emptied, but the tension did not leave with the delegates. It clung to the air like a storm that had not yet broken. Elias Rourke was escorted from the central platform by a group of neutral attendants, made of soft light and sound. They did not touch him, but their presence guided his path through wide corridors that curved and shifted as he walked. His mind was still racing, trying to understand what had happened. Chosen mate. The words felt unreal. They echoed in his thoughts no matter how hard he tried to push them away. He had come to represent humanity. He had not come to become part of an ancient alien bond that half the galaxy seemed to understand better than he did. The attendants led him into a quiet chamber designed for visiting diplomats. The room adjusted itself as he entered, reshaping into something that felt almost human. The light softened, the air warmed. A simple chair formed near a smooth table. Elias sat down heavily. Only then did his hands begin to shake. He pressed his palms together, breathing slowly, grounding himself the way his training had taught him. Panic would help no one. Confusion was natural. Fear was understandable. But he had a responsibility now, whether he liked it or not. A soft tone sounded in the room.
"Human Elias Rourke," a voice said gently. He looked up.
High Matriarch Kalith stood near the entrance. She had come alone, without guards or attendants. Her presence filled the room, but she did not try to dominate it. Instead, she waited. "You may enter," Elias said automatically, then paused. "I mean..."
"Yes?" Kyleth stepped inside.
The room adjusted again, subtly expanding, as if giving her space without pushing him aside.
"I did not intend to overwhelm you," she said.
Elias let out a short, tired breath. "With respect, Matriarch, that's exactly what happened." Her eyes studied him closely.
"You speak plainly," she observed. "That is rare." "We don't have time for anything else," Elias replied.
Too much goes wrong when people hide behind words. Something like approval passed through her expression. "Unsettled!" Kalith said. "I think that's a fair description," Elias said. "My people are watching this ceremony from light years away." I don't even know how to explain what just happened. Kalith moved closer, but stopped at a respectful distance. "Then allow me to explain," she said. "Not as a ruler, but as an individual." Elias nodded. "Please." Kalith folded her arms in a gesture that, Elias realized, might be similar to human contemplation. "My species has ruled this region of space for a very long time," she said. "We are stable, predictable, powerful."
"That sounds like a good thing," Elias said. "It once was," Kalith replied.
"Now it is a weakness." Elias frowned slightly. "How?" "Because we no longer change," she said.
"We perfect systems, then protect them until they become prisons. Innovation is seen as disruption.
Curiosity is risk." Elias leaned back in his chair.
"That sounds familiar." Kalith's eyes focused on him. "Your species is young."
"Unstable. You fail often." Elias almost smiled. Often is an understatement. "And yet," Kalith continued, "you adapt faster than any species we have observed. You argue with yourselves. You revise beliefs. You break systems and build new ones." "That also causes problems," Elias said quietly. "Yes," Kalith agreed. "But it also creates movement." She stepped closer. "The bond I declared
is not about romance or control.
It is a cultural signal. A signal to who? Elias asked.
To everyone, Kalis said. That stagnation is no longer acceptable. Elias rubbed his forehead. You could have sent a message. Messages can be ignored, she replied. Ceremony cannot. Elias looked at her for a long moment.
So I'm a symbol. You are a participant, Caliph corrected. There is a difference. He stood up, pacing slowly.
You put my entire species in a difficult position. I am aware, she said, and I regret the discomfort.
But the alternative was extinction by stillness. Elias stopped pacing.
Extinction?
Caliph nodded.
Not sudden, not dramatic.
Slow, quiet. A future where we exist but no longer matter.
Elias felt a chill.
Humanity had feared extinction too, though in different ways. You chose me, he said slowly.
Why?
Kyleth met his gaze without hesitation. Because you asked questions when others offered rehearsed statements.
Because you stood without armor. Because you did not attempt to impress. That doesn't sound like enough,
Elias said. For us, she replied, it is everything. A soft signal interrupted them. Elias's communicator activated, projecting a small image of a human woman in formal attire.
Ambassador Chen, Elias said.
Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Elias, she said, we need to talk. Caliph inclined her head slightly.
I will wait, she said, stepping back.
The projection adjusted.
What happened out there?
Ambassador Chen asked. Elias exhaled.
That's a complicated question. We are receiving inquiries from half a dozen major powers, Chen said. Some are confused.
Some are concerned, some are angry.
That makes sense, Elias said.
You're being framed as a political lever, she continued. Some are already speculating that humanity planned this.
Elias felt his stomach tighten. We didn't.
I know, Chen said. But perception matters.
Elias glanced at Kyleth, who stood quietly, listening without intruding.
I didn't agree to anything permanent, Elias said. Not yet.
That may not matter, Chen replied.
The declaration alone has consequences. Elias closed his eyes briefly. What does Earth want me to do? There was a pause, a rare one.
We want you to survive this,
Chen said honestly, and to keep humanity from being crushed between larger powers. Elias nodded slowly. I'll do my best. The connection ended. Silence returned to the room. Kalis stepped forward again.
Your people are afraid, she said. Yes, Elias said.
And so am I. Fear is not weakness, Caliph said. Refusal to act because of fear is. Elias met her gaze. You're asking a lot from someone you just met. Caliph considered that. Then I will ask less, she said. For now, she extended one hand, palm open. Learn. Question. Observe.
The bond will not complete unless you choose it.
Elias looked at her hand. It was not a demand. It was an invitation. He did not take it, but he did not step away either.
I need time, he said. You will have it, Caliph replied.
As she turned to leave, Elias spoke again. Matriarch? She paused. If this goes wrong, he said, people will blame humans. Yes, she said calmly. They will. And you're willing to accept that? Caliph looked back at him, her eyes steady and bright. Progress always has a cost, she said. My people have avoided it for too long. She left the room, the door dissolving behind her. Elias sank back into the chair, staring at the empty space she had occupied. Humanity had not conquered the stars. It had unsettled them. And somewhere deep inside, Elias realized that was exactly why the galaxy was afraid. News of the declaration spread faster than any official message could control. Within hours, the convergence world felt different. The calm neutrality that had defined it for centuries was gone, replaced by quiet movement and careful watching. Elias Rourke felt it the moment he stepped out of the diplomatic chamber. Corridors that had once flowed freely now seemed full of pauses. Delegates stopped speaking when he passed. Some watched with open curiosity. Others avoided him completely. A few stared with expressions Elias could not read, layered with emotions his translator struggled to name. He had become visible in a way no human ever had before. A neutral guide of shifting light led him through the upper galleries, where observation chambers overlooked the central hall. Elias walked slowly, hands clasped behind his back, trying to look calmer than he felt. "You are now a point of convergence," the guide said in a soft, neutral tone.
"That sounds important," Elias replied. "And uncomfortable." "Both statements are accurate," the guide answered.
They stopped near a wide, transparent wall. Beyond it, Elias could see groups of delegates gathered in tight clusters. Signals flashed between them. Color, sound, motion, rapid conversations happening all at once. "They are discussing you," the guide said.
I guessed, Elias said. "Your species has altered probability paths," the guide continued.
This is rare. Elias watched the room below.
"We seem to do that a lot." The guide tilted slightly, as if amused.
Indeed. Elias was dismissed soon after. As he returned to the human delegation quarters, he found Ambassador Chen waiting for him, arms folded, expression focused.
"You've become the most talked about being in the system," she said.
"I was hoping for a quieter first impression," Elias replied.
Chen gave a small smile, then grew serious. "We're receiving requests, meetings, demands. Some want explanations, some want assurances."
Some want access to me? Elias asked. To humanity, Chen corrected. Through you. Elias sat down.
I never agreed to be a gateway. No, Chen said. But you are one now. She activated a projection showing a map of surrounding systems.
Several regions were highlighted. "These powers are concerned," she said. "They've relied on the Virexian conquered stability for centuries. Your involvement threatens that balance." "I didn't do anything," Elias said. "You existed," Chen replied, and that was enough. A soft signal interrupted them. High Matriarch Caliph entered the room, this time accompanied by 2 advisors. They remained near the entrance, silent and watchful. Kaelith approached Elias and inclined her head slightly. "The reactions are unfolding faster than anticipated," she said.
That tends to happen with surprises, Elias said. Kalith's eyes shifted briefly to Ambassador Chen.
Your people are cautious, she observed. They have to be, Chen replied.
We're new. We can't afford to misstep. Kalith nodded.
Nor can we. She turned back to Elias. You are being invited to observe the Council of Continuance. Elias blinked.
Isn't that restricted? It is, Kalis said, but exceptions are being made. For me, Elias said.
For humanity, she corrected. Elias hesitated.
Why?
Because some wish to understand you, Kalis said, and others wish to measure you.
That sounds less friendly, Elias said.
Measurement often is, she replied calmly. The council chamber was smaller than the ceremonial hall, but far more intense. Representatives from dozens of civilizations filled the space, arranged not by rank, but by influence. Elias felt the pressure of it immediately. Like standing at the center of many quiet storms, he took a seat beside Caliph, conscious of every movement. The council began, without announcement. Signals aligned, translators synchronized, and the chamber focused. A representative from a long-established trade coalition spoke first.
"The declaration has disrupted long-standing equilibrium," the voice said. "We request clarification of intent."
Caliph answered calmly. "The intent was renewal." Another voice followed, sharper. "Renewal for whom?" "For all," Caliph said.
"Or for those willing to change." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A third representative spoke, this one addressing Elias directly.
"Human representative, did your species seek this bond?" Elias stood. He could feel the attention narrow, sharpen.
"No."
"Then why did you not refuse?" the voice asked. Elias took a breath. Because refusal without understanding would have been dishonest. Another delegate leaned forward. "Do humans often accept obligations they do not understand?" "Yes," Elias said. "That's how we learn." Some signals flickered. Confusion, interest, concern. Caliph watched him closely. A younger civilization's representative spoke next. "If humans are chosen as catalysts," the voice said, "what prevents them from reshaping the galaxy to their advantage?" Elias answered without hesitation. "Our lack of unity?" That caused a pause. "We argue," he continued. "We disagree, we fail. Any attempt to control something this large would break us first." Caliph's advisors exchanged subtle signals.
"Then you are dangerous,"
another voice said.
Yes, the honesty seemed to unsettle the chamber more than any threat. The council continued for hours.
Questions came from every direction. Elias answered when he could, admitted ignorance when he couldn't.
He refused to exaggerate humanity's strength or hide its flaws. By the end, exhaustion pressed down on him like a weight. As the chamber emptied, Caliph remained seated beside him.
"You spoke truth, even when it weakened your position," she said. Elias rubbed his eyes.
"That's usually when it matters most." Caliph studied him for a long moment. "Some fear you," she said.
"Others are hopeful. And you?" Elias asked. "I am encouraged," she said.
"And cautious." They walked together through a quiet passage afterward. The lights dimmed as they passed, responding to their presence.
"You are under pressure,"
Caliph said.
"From many sides."
"So are you," Elias replied.
"Yes," she agreed. "But I chose this."
Elias stopped walking. "And I didn't." Caliph stopped as well. "No," she said softly.
"You did not." She turned to face him fully. "If you choose to step away, the consequences will be severe."
"For both our peoples."
Elias met her gaze.
"And if I stay, then change becomes possible," she said. "But never safe." Elias exhaled slowly. Humans had a saying, if something is both important and terrifying, it's usually worth paying attention to. Caliph tilted her head. "I will remember that." Later, alone in his quarters, Elias stood by a wide viewport, looking out at the stars. Somewhere among them was Earth, fragile, loud, divided, full of hope and mistakes. He felt very small. But he also felt something else. Momentum. Humanity had stepped into a story already in motion. Not as conquerors. Not as rulers, but as disruption. And the galaxy, whether it liked it or not, was beginning to move. The request arrived without ceremony. Elias Rourke was alone when the message appeared, projected softly into the air of his quarters. The signal carried the neutral seal of the Convergence Authority, but the priority marking beneath it was unmistakable. Mandatory assembly, full council. Immediate attendance requested. Elias stared at the words for a long moment. They were done asking questions. Now they wanted answers. He changed into his uniform slowly, carefully. Every movement felt heavier than usual, as if the air itself resisted him. Somewhere in the vast structure around him, decisions were already being made. He was about to be placed at the center of them. When he entered the Grand Council chamber, he felt it immediately. The atmosphere was different. The chamber was full, more crowded than before. Delegates filled every tier. Observers lined the upper galleries. Signals of color and sound moved constantly between groups, faster and sharper than Elias had seen before. This was not a discussion chamber. This was a judgment chamber. Kayla stood near the center platform, her posture straight, her expression controlled. When she saw Elias, her eyes met his for a brief moment. There was no reassurance in them, only honesty. This was the moment. Elias took his place beside her. The chamber quieted. A senior coordinator of the Convergence stepped forward, its form shifting through several stable shapes as it spoke.
The declaration made during the witnessing ceremony has produced destabilizing effects across multiple regions, it said. Several powers have issued formal objections. Elias felt every word like a tightening thread. One proposal, the coordinator continued, is to suspend the declaration and remove the human representative from further participation. The chamber stirred. Another voice followed quickly. This would preserve stability. A different voice responded. At the cost of trust, Caliph spoke then, her voice steady. Suspension would be interpreted as weakness, she said, and as betrayal. Or restraint, a delegate countered. Elias listened, silent, as arguments moved back and forth. Words like balance, precedent, risk, and containment filled the chamber. Humanity was discussed as an idea more than a people, a variable, a factor. He felt something tighten inside his chest. Finally, the coordinator turned toward him. Human Elias Rourke, it said. You have been silent. Elias stood. The room focused on him, completely. He could feel it. Thousands of minds, thousands of judgments, all narrowing down to one fragile human frame.
I've been listening, he said simply.
That may no longer be sufficient, the coordinator replied. You are asked to clarify humanity's position. Elias took a slow breath.
On what? On alignment? The coordinator said. On the bond?
On whether your species intends to stand apart, stand with the Concord, or withdraw. The question landed like a weight. Elias looked at Kyleth. She did not speak. She did not signal. This choice was his. He turned back to the chamber. I can't speak for all of humanity's future, he said.
We argue too much for that, but I can speak for how we got here. The chamber waited. We didn't come looking for power, Elias continued.
We came because we were curious, because we wanted to understand who else was out here. A ripple of reaction moved through the crowd.
We didn't plan the declaration, he said. We didn't manipulate anyone.
If anything, we were unprepared. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. But now that we are here, Elias said, his voice gaining strength, we won't pretend we don't exist. A murmur spread. We won't hide, he continued. And we won't play at neutrality just to make others comfortable. Kayla's eyes brightened slightly. We don't want to rule anyone, Elias said. We don't want to be protected or elevated. What we want is the same thing we've always wanted. He paused. A chance to grow, he said. And to make mistakes. And to learn from them. The chamber was silent.
A delegate finally spoke. And if your growth destabilizes us? Elias nodded.
Then it already means you needed to change. The reaction was immediate.
Signals flared across the chamber. Alarm, disagreement, interest. That is reckless, a voice said. Yes, Elias replied. We are. That recklessness, she said, is why they matter. She turned to the chamber. For centuries, we have prioritized stability over relevance.
Control over curiosity. The human presence has exposed our fear.
Her gaze swept the delegates. Not fear of violence. The coordinator raised a limb. The risk remains unacceptable. Elias spoke again, surprising even himself.
Then set terms?
The chamber stilled. Define boundaries, Elias said. Observe us. Question us.
Hold us accountable, but don't pretend you can stop what's already happening.
The coordinator considered this. You propose conditional continuation. I propose honesty, Elias said.
Silence stretched. Finally, the coordinator spoke.
The council will vote. Elias sat down slowly. His legs felt weak.
The vote was not displayed in human terms. Colors shifted, tones aligned, probabilities recalculated. It took longer than Elias expected. When the decision came, it was quiet. By majority consensus, the coordinator said, the declaration will stand in provisional state. The human representative will remain active, under observation. Elias closed his eyes briefly. Relief washed through the chamber, mixed with tension. Caliph inclined her head.
We accept the terms. The assembly dissolved slowly after that. Groups broke apart, already planning next moves.
Alliances shifted in subtle ways. As Elias and Caliph walked together through a private corridor, the silence between them felt different now. You placed yourself between powers, Caliph said.
So did you,
Elias replied. Yes, she said. But you did so without authority. He shrugged. We're used to that. Caliph stopped walking. You could have chosen safety. Elias met her gaze.
Safety without agency isn't safety. It's just waiting.
Caliph studied him for a long moment. You understand the cost now. I think I'm starting to, Elias said. She extended her hand again, not ceremonial, not formal, just open. This time, Elias placed his hand lightly against hers. The contact was brief, steady, deliberate. Not a bond. Not yet. But a signal. Somewhere beyond the walls of the convergence, messages were already spreading. Reports. Opinions. Warnings. Hope. Humanity had not been removed. It had been acknowledged. And the galaxy, unsettled and uncertain, was adjusting around that fact. Elias returned to his quarters late, exhausted beyond words. He sat by the viewport again, watching the slow drift of distant stars. He did not feel victorious. He felt responsible. And he knew the hardest part was still ahead, because now the galaxy was no longer asking what humans were. It was waiting to see what they would choose to become. The days after the council decision passed more quietly than Elias Rourke expected. That quiet, however, was not peace. It was the kind of silence that comes when everyone is watching and waiting for the next move. The convergence world continued its routines. Ships arrived and departed. Delegates met behind closed doors. Messages traveled across light years, carrying interpretations, warnings, and hopes shaped by fear or excitement. Humanity was no longer a rumor or a curiosity. Humanity was a question. Elias felt that weight every time he stepped outside his quarters. He was greeted politely, but differently now. Some delegates nodded with respect. Others watched him with careful distance. A few younger representatives approached him openly, asking simple questions about Earth, about human cities, about why humans argued so much, even among themselves. He was answered honestly, even when the answers were messy.
"We don't agree because we don't want to," he told one delegate. "We argue because we care."
That seemed to confuse them and interest them. Caliph requested a private meeting on the 7th day after the council vote, not a formal summons. A request. Elias accepted immediately. They met in a quiet space overlooking a wide field of drifting light structures, a place meant for reflection rather than negotiation. The room held no symbols of rank, no observers, just two individuals facing the consequences of their choices.
"You are tired," Kalis said as Elias entered. "So are you," he replied. "Yes," she agreed.
But this is the productive kind of exhaustion. Elias smiled faintly and took a seat. That's one way to describe it. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the light outside shift slowly, responding to distant movements.
"The provisional state cannot last forever," Kalis said at last. "I figured," Elias replied.
"Nothing important ever stays temporary." Caliph turned toward him. "The council will soon demand resolution.
Either the bond completes or it dissolves." Elias nodded.
"And both options come with consequences." "Yes," she said. "For both our peoples."
Elias leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. "I want to be clear," he said. "I won't accept anything that turns humanity into a symbol without a voice."
"That was never my intent."
"Then tell me what you really meant by mate," Elias said. "Not the ceremonial meaning. The real one."
Caliph considered her words carefully. "In my culture," she said, "a mate is not chosen for comfort.
They are chosen for friction." Elias raised an eyebrow. "That explains a lot," she continued. "A mate stands beside leadership not to agree, but to challenge, to question, to prevent stagnation. The bond creates balance."
"So you weren't choosing me," Elias said slowly. "You were choosing what I represent."
"Yes," Kaith said. "And no." She met his gaze.
"You could have refused publicly. You could have hidden behind protocol."
"You did not," Elias exhaled.
"I didn't want to lie. That choice mattered," Kalis said. "Not because you are human, but because you are you." Elias sat back, absorbing that.
"Earth won't accept a bond that removes our independence," he said.
"And I would not ask for that," Kalith replied. "A forced alliance would fail." They stood together at the viewport.
"What if," Elias said slowly, "the bond wasn't between us as individuals, but between our approaches?" Kalis turned toward him. "Explain. Humans don't change systems by taking control," Elias said. "We change them by questioning why they exist in the first place." Kalis' eyes brightened. "What if the bond becomes a promise," Elias continued, "that neither of our peoples will prioritize comfort over growth?" Caliph was silent for a long moment. "That would redefine the concept entirely," she said.
"Good," Elias replied.
The galaxy could use some redefining. The final assembly was held not in the Grand Council chamber, but in the ceremonial hall where everything had begun.
The choice was deliberate. Witnesses gathered once more, filling the vast space with quiet anticipation. The galaxy was watching again, but this time it understood what was at stake. Elias stood beside Kalith on the central platform. He felt nervous, but not afraid. When Kalith raised her arm, the hall responded instantly. Light patterns formed, ancient and precise. "In the presence of witnesses," she said, we return to the matter of the declared bond. She paused, then continued.
The human representative has challenged the traditional meaning of this bond, she said, and in doing so has fulfilled its purpose. A ripple of attention moved through the chamber.
I now ask, Khalith said, turning to Elias, do you choose to stand as a mate, not of blood or rule, but of principle? Elias took a breath. He thought of Earth, of crowded cities and quiet nights, of arguments and laughter.
I do, he said.
On one condition.
Khalith inclined her head.
State it, that this bond binds no one to obedience,
Elias said. Only to honesty. The chamber was silent. Khalith smiled. Then I accept, she said, as do my people. The ceremonial system adjusted, responding to the altered intent. The light patterns changed, softer but stronger, stabilizing into something new. Not domination, not submission. Partnership. The witnesses felt it. Even those who did not understand the details understood the shift. Something old had been reshaped. Afterward, reactions spread across the galaxy. Some powers withdrew, unwilling to accept uncertainty. Others leaned closer, curious. Younger civilizations found courage in the idea that change did not require conquest. Humanity did not gain territory. It gained relevance.
Back on Earth, debates erupted.
Some praised Elias. Some criticized him. Some feared the future. Elias accepted all of it. Months later, as the first joint cultural forums began, Elias stood once more by a viewport, watching stars drift past. Khalith joined him.
You have altered the course of things, she said.
We didn't do it alone, Elias replied. No, she agreed. That is what makes it lasting. She looked out at the stars.
The galaxy will never be comfortable with humans.
Elias smiled softly.
We're not comfortable with ourselves most of the time.
Khalith made a sound that the translator identified as amusement. Perhaps, she said. That is why you are necessary.
Elias felt a quiet certainty settle inside him. Humanity had not been chosen because it was strong.
Or wise. Or united. It had been chosen because it refused to stop becoming something new. And as the stars continued their slow, endless motion, Elias knew one thing with absolute clarity. The galaxy would never be the same. Not because humans ruled it, but because they were finally part of it.